plus. Basically, with their two locations that they have, they're already in site access locations. And then, with the Hyatt being a, site access location, that right there is, a big plus. And the hometown GM is now putting her hat in the ring too. So, yeah, so you'll be hearing from a lot of people.
I was in Minneapolis a week ago.
Yeah.
Good morning and welcome to all of you to our August 28th consent agenda council meeting and workshop. And we will jump right into our consent agenda item. And the first item of the day is to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of August 21st, 2018. Any changes or corrections needed? Seeing none, I would move that we approve the August 21st, 2018 meeting minutes.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Motion passes unanimously. Consent agenda items 1 through 30. Any items that need to be pulled for discussion or clarification? Seeing none, I would move that we approve the consent agenda items 1 through 30.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Council agenda, we have travel. So I would move that we approve the travel for James Clendenin to attend the National League of Cities CED Committee Fall Meeting in Fort Worth, Texas. Are you still on that committee, I take it, James?
Till the end of the year.
They do it on Labor Day weekend?
Yeah.
So attend the fall meeting in Fort Worth, Texas, August 30th to September 2nd, 2018, and approve the one-way travel for him. I mean, the round-trip travel.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Any board appointments or comments? No board appointments, no comments. Everyone's coming off of a great weekend. And everyone's ready for the upcoming Labor Day weekend. So I would move that we adjourn today's council meeting.
Second.
Motion and a second to adjourn. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And we will turn it over to the city manager to start in on our workshop.
Mr.
Robert?
Mayor, thank you. We've got 3 items for you today. The first one has to do with a partnership that we've had in existence for a number of years for the Great Plains Nature Center. They have gone through an operational review and a strategic planning process. I'm going to start the presentation with Troy Houtman, and he'll introduce the participants.
Thank you, City Manager. Mayor, Council, Troy Houtman, Director of Parks and Recreation. And the item that I'm bringing to you today is in regards to the Great Plains Nature Center. We have a wonderful partnership and a wonderful facility at the Great Plains Nature Center. And we've been working really hard on making sure that the future is sustainable for the Great Plains Nature Center. And so with the partners, we have been working on a master plan to be looking at in the future. So we wanted to share that with you and kind of share some of the future with it. Some of my colleagues here that we worked on together, I have Mr. Mark Morrell, he's the director. He's from the Kansas Department of Wildlife, Park and Tourism. Not here today, we have Lori Jones, and she's from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, another partner. Amanda Alisi, she's from the City of Wichita, in the Parks and Recreation Department, the best department in the city. We have Todd Lewis. He's the president of the Friends of the Great Plains Nature Center, a fantastic partner and a great driver of all things with the Great Plains Nature Center. And then to help us with this process, we had Misty Bruckner. She came in, from the from the WSU Policy and Public and Management Center. I'm really messing up today, boy. I am not hitting anything today. From WSU Public Policy and Management Center. So to open this up a little bit, I just wanted to share how important the Great Plains Nature Center is. We always talk a lot about quality of life. We talk a lot about what we need in Wichita, and to have great air quality, great water quality, great places to recreate outside, hunting and fishing, hiking, biking, doing all things outside. This is what we're all talking about, the future of Wichita and the impact that we have in the environment and the impact that we have as the stewards of the environment here in Wichita is really, really important. And so And that's one of the main functions of the Great Plains Nature Center, is that it provides a lot of educational opportunities for people in Wichita to understand what those impacts are on the environment. And we have some great professionals that work at the Great Plains Nature Center that have a huge and strong background in natural resources. And so as we look forward in the future with natural resources as being a priority, I think these folks have a huge opportunity to play a big part here in Wichita. So to start us off, I'll have Mark. He's going to talk a little bit more about the partnership and some of the things that they've been doing.
Which button? Oh, there, I got you. There we go. All right, good morning, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. I appreciate the opportunity to be here to speak with you this morning. My name is Mark Merle. I'm the director of the Great Plains Nature Center. I wanted to give you a little bit of background about the center itself. It started actually with a City of Wichita employee named Bob Gress. Bob worked for the former Wichita Wild program for many, many years, and came up with an idea of bringing environmental education to the City of Wichita. We quickly realized that he could not do that alone, so he reached out to then Secretary of Wildlife and Parks Bob Minan, who talked to former Governor Mike Hayden, and even the city and state agencies realized that they couldn't do it on their own. So they went a step further and got in touch with Bob Dole, and as a result, the Great Plains Nature Center was formed at the time. We took occupancy of the building in 1996. The Nature Center opened as a public visitor center in 2000. We had some problems with our displays when some of them were destroyed in a natural disaster up in Oregon, but in the meantime, we were doing this public programming until the center opened in the year 2000. So we've added an additional partner just recently with our most recent memorandum of agreement in 2016, and that is the Friends of the Great Plains Nature Center. They become a more active partner in that, so we now have four partners with the Great Plains Nature Center. The Great Plains Nature Center itself, if you've never been there, is a fantastic visitor center. We don't charge any admission. I always joke that we're the cheapest date in Wichita for sure, where if people have relatives in town that they don't necessarily like, they can bring them out, dump them off for a couple hours and go do something else. But the Nature Center itself is focused on environmental outdoor education. We have interactive displays, dioramas, that you can walk through, a 2,200-gallon aquarium with Kansas native fishes in it, great gift shop. And our primary focus is on educating people about the wildlife and habitats associated with the Great Plains region. Last year, we've been doing this, like I said, almost 20 years now. Last year, we had almost 208,000 visitors that came to the Nature Center through various programs that walk the trails at Chisholm Creek Park. We use that as an outdoor classroom, 240 acres right there. And what we've got in Wichita is an urban wildlife oasis. Just a mile east of Rock Road, there's thousands of vehicles. You go west to Oliver, thousands of vehicles. But right there in Wichita, we've got what we call a wildlife gym in 240 acres. We've got deer and turkeys and coyotes and things like that right in the city of Wichita. And we're pretty proud of that. We do a lot of school programs. Last year we reached almost 47,000 people. About 65% of those were children. About 35% were adults. We gave roughly 2,000 organized programs last year. So if we look at the 200,000 plus visitors, we rank in the top 3 as far as visitor centers or places that people actually visit in and around Wichita. We're pretty proud of that fact. We've got a great staff. Working with Troy the last few years has been great. We appreciate the opportunities to work with the city of Wichita, and we feel that we're an attraction in Wichita. We're fairly fortunate that we have a lot of people that really enjoy that, whether it's coming out to a Walk with Wildlife event where we have 2,000 people visit, or daily programs that we do for small kids clear on up to adults. Tomorrow we've got a Senior Wednesday program. We'll have 150 of our senior citizens that come out and are going to learn about the women of the prairie and how some of those ladies got involved in natural resources. So we're pretty proud of the Nature Center. I've been involved with it since we opened in 1996. I've been the director for the last almost a year now, and it's gone really well. We've had some great cooperative partners that we have. Troy with the city, like I said, has been great since we started. And recently we added our Friends group, and talking with our friends group, we wanted to come up, we've been around long enough that maybe we wanted to change things up. So we talked to Misty Bruckner at WSU and decided that we needed a strategic plan to come up with a focus on the future. We wanted to get more partners involved. We maybe wanted to renovate our Habitat Hall and do some new things. We found that we needed to get more groups of college kids to come to the Nature Center. So we've been very successful in the past nearly 20 years, but we wanted to make ourselves even more successful and kind of look to the future with some of our planning, and that's where Misty came into the picture. And I'll turn it over to Misty Bruckner now.
Good morning, Council members. Good morning, Mayor. It's great to be here. Misty Bruckner from Wichita State University. It's nice to have a project where we're talking about process, not leaving you with a whole bunch of data or statistics, not talking about financials. So glad to be a part of this today. I want to thank the Great Plains Nature Center for this opportunity and for the Park and Recreation Department. So our planning process involved appointing a strategic planning committee, first off. And I know we've all talked about this partnership, but the uniqueness of this is really something to celebrate, and the management and the leveraging of resources. We probably do 4 to 5 strategic plans a year, and never have we had this opportunity to work with all of these levels of government and nonprofit organization that has citizens willing to step up and take the lead and help support this in such a way. So it's really something to celebrate about what's going on here. We had an influencing factors report just talking about conditions as far as programming, financial situation, membership. We actually had a class doing applied learning, and this was one of their projects to look at that. So dove into some issues on programming numbers, giving numbers, potential givers in the future. We did stakeholder interviews with folks who are directly involved with the project, as well as some of the historic folks, because there's a lot of history with this. We'll talk a little bit more about community engagement and then the development of the plan. So with the 4 lead partners, it gave us a time to talk with folks at each level and with the nonprofit to find out what their needs were, concerns that they had, how this can move forward in the future. And what was great to see was there's a lot of consistency in what they hope for. The educational component being something within an urban environment that kids especially could learn about nature and have that opportunity to take that back. And to be a resource and partners with other, especially nonprofits and attractions within the community. And really thinking about, especially where they are located, how to be an urban partner. So how to make sure that those opportunities and educational components, recreation components, were there for all. On our focus groups, we did a lot in this area as far as working with partner organizations. We talked to volunteers, talked to staff. We went to a District 1 breakfast trying to think about how to engage neighborhoods around the Great Plains Nature Center in that effort. And we talked with Intercept users, people who are out walking on the paths. We talked to them about how they use the Great Plains Nature Center, what they wanted to see from that. We used the Friends of the Great Plains Nature Center for sounding boards throughout the way, so talked with their membership, talked with the board, and really tried to figure out what the community was needing. We also conducted a survey that was open. It was an online survey that we pushed out in many different directions to try to get an idea of what the community would want from the Great Plains Nature Center. Okay. So most importantly, we were trying to understand, why do people visit there? And so the first part of the survey really looked at, do people look at this as an entertainment issue? Do they look at this as an attraction? Do they think it about from a health perspective? How do people think about this? What we found out was that most people connect the walking path directly to the center. And so in our minds, or if you're in management, you might separate those a little bit, but that park in the center, that physical building, are directly connected. So how do you leverage that resource to get more people inside the center there? The other thing that we learned from this are those special events, that a lot of those activities that go on at the Great Plains Nature Center, those are really important to draw folks in. In the survey, about 46% of the folks that responded said they visit it once or twice a year. There's probably another 30% that said they visit monthly. So how do you get folks using this on a more regular basis is what we were trying to learn from this information. And so, of course, that leads to the next follow-up. So what would cause you to use the Great Plains Nature Center more? And that really got into this issue of expanded programming, rotation of new exhibits, and then the last one, really the better communication on upcoming events and programming. So that's when you get into the issues of partnerships, reaching out directly into neighborhoods around the community, and a lot of the ways to get the word out about what a resource and asset this is for our community. So that's a quick overview of some of the background that we put together that led into the actual plan. And I'm glad to introduce Todd Lewis, who's president of the Great Plains Nature Center, who's going to kind of walk through that plan and the role of that partnership for them.
Thank you, Misty. Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to come and speak about the Great Plains Nature Center. It's really an honor for myself and my family to be a part of this endeavor, be a part of the Great Plains Nature Center. It's certainly a passion that we all have, the four of us. And so it's an honor to be a part of it. The Great Plains Nature Center, really briefly, and before I start, I need to be very appreciative and thank you all for the support that you've given the Great Plains Nature Center over the years, financially, and then the support that we receive from Parks and Rec on communication about what we offer as far as programming goes. The Great Plains Nature Center, our board's focus, and 2018 has been all about intentional focus on what we are called to do as a partner. What is it that is our board's purpose, and being laser focused on that, and then also action. As the opportunity has been given to us to be a partner, an official partner, we have a role to play, and we need to know what that role is, and we need to take action on it. So the board's purpose is one, to increase awareness about the center, and I'll paraphrase here. Two, to sustain the programs of the organization, including the ongoing education, the publications that we produce, and then thirdly, and most importantly, as it relates to strategic plan, not only to recruit volunteers, but also to raise funds. And so as you will see in our strategic plan, the Friends of the Great Plains Nature Center will play a key role in raising the funds that we need to achieve our objective here. So with regard to education, this will be something that we will partner with the staff on, but really is staff focused in providing enhanced education through the Great Plains Nature Center. Some of you may know we used to have a formal partnership with USD 259, and they actually position staff out at the Great Plains Nature Center. We don't have that anymore, but one of the things that we want to accomplish this year and moving forward is a more formal partnership, not just with USD 259, but also area and regional school districts to provide more programming to them. Second, let me go back here. Second would be the partnership, volunteers, members. This is truly a joint objective of the strategic plan between the staff of the Great Plains Nature Center and the Friends of the Great Plains Nature Center, and us as a Friends group, leveraging our contacts in the community to spread awareness. Of course, you see right underneath really will be the thrust of what we want to accomplish as a Friends group, and that's modernizing our facilities to engage new volunteers. As you'll see in your handout, we will be developing a Building for the Future initiative, a capital campaign. The Friends of the Great Plains Nature Center has historically raised some funds, but we're going to step that up. And we want to develop a capital campaign that we will take the lead on to raise funds for things like an outdoor classroom, things like an expanded educational wing, and a modernization of the exhibit hall. And then lastly, the marketing, and it really goes back to the slides that you saw that Misty's group worked on for us. And that's the communication about what's coming up, what is offered. For us as a Friends of the Great Plains Nature Center, moving forward, we don't want to have to say, hey, we're a hidden gem. We want everyone to know who we are, and we want to strengthen that brand message for the Great Plains Nature Center, and we want to take the lead. And through the strategic planning process, we've been asked to take the lead on that brand message, that brand promise, who we are, what we do, and how we benefit the community. And so that's just a quick overview of the 4 objectives. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Troy.
So I'm not going to go too much into the community benefits because I think a lot of folks understand how important this facility is, and the programs that we have are so important. But the impacts are something that we really want to talk about. We want to expand outdoor educational opportunities, and that's something that we need to do throughout the whole community, and we're going to have to use these partnerships to make that happen. And I'm glad that we spoke about the school district, and I think those are a very important partner that we want to bring into the fold here. And the next impact is really provide visitors with a new and unique experience. Times change, people change, and their expectations change. And if you come to the facility once, we want you to come again, but we also want to bring in new visitors. We need to bring in new folks to the Great Plains Nature Center and get them exposed to all the great things that are happening at the center and teach them all about the environment here in Wichita. And we're looking for a more diverse audience and what it will actually reach. And we know that we have some really strong visitors that come on a regular basis, but we need to bring in some of the new folks and a really more diverse group of folks to come in and use the facility. Prior to this morning, we met upstairs in my office and we were talking about some of the things to prepare for this little presentation. And the thing that was really striking to me in our conversation was that the things that, especially the kids, they come and they learn some great information about the environment, and they bring that home, and it's the parents that bring that home as well. And how do they change their daily lives to have a better impact on the environment and to have a better understanding of the habitat here around Wichita. So this facility really provides that opportunity. And as I started off with the presentation in regards to quality of life, this is a huge quality of life initiator. And if we don't have folks that understand what our environment is all about, how to maintain and how to control nature and spend time out in the outdoors, we're going to have a hard time catching up. So that definitely is something that we want to work on in the future, and that's what this whole master plan is all about. We wanted to make sure that we were changing with the times, that we were looking at things in the future, and as a group of 4 volunteers, how could we leverage each other to make sure that we are changing for the future. And having a plan in place is really going to help us. Always having a plan to follow through and go back and to use as a foundation is something that is really helpful. And together as a group, it's really been fantastic working together because there's nobody who's one taking the lead. We're all taking the same responsibility, and we all take as much of the effort to make it happen. So that concludes the presentation, and if there's any specific questions you have about the Great Plains Nature Center or about what we want to do in the future, we have some experts here that can help answer any questions that you have.
Questions from the group? Yes, go ahead, Councilmember.
Thanks, Mayor. This question is kind of more for Todd. So when you talked about the partnerships with 259, have you been able to reach back out to Dr. Thompson or see if you can re-engage that and maybe provide some opportunities there?
That's definitely the plan. You know, it's understanding who the right person is to re-engage that conversation. Selfishly, because I have 2 boys in USD 259, I would love to see a formal partnership again. But, you know, what I want to do is make sure that whether it's formal or informal, that, you know, whether we have a child that's, you know, comes from a farming family or a kid that lives at 17th and Pyatt, if they've got a love of the outdoors and the natural world, that they understand that, you know, education is right there for them. And it's right here in our city. So, yeah, I would love to see that's part of the plan, but we haven't identified the right person within USD 259 to have that, to initiate that conversation.
Okay, well, I don't mind helping you out with that. And
okay.
Then there's another school, Urban Preparatory Academy. Mm-hmm. I think that'd be great. They're not too far from there. Yeah. And I think those young people would love to have that partnership as well. Yep. So I'll help you out with that. Fantastic.
Thank you, Brandon.
Thank you. Thanks, man.
So a couple of questions, and you broke down the demographics a little bit. Of the demographics that we focused on, where we said a percentage were youth, a percentage were adults, Did we track where they came from? How many of them came from the neighborhood? How many came from across the city?
I think we do track them by zip code. I'm going to ask Mark to answer that question.
Yes, sir. I think in Misty's results, we looked at it, and a major part of our walk-in visitors came from that general area of 67220 in our area code. As far as the programming in that, we really had a little more far-reaching effect as far as the greater Wichita area. We had people come in. We don't get people from all over Kansas, but we do get people from a couple hours away. Busing has been a big issue.
Was it pretty balanced, though, when you saw people come from all different directions?
It was, as far as the greater Wichita area.
So it wasn't just the neighborhood using it?
Right. As far as programs, school programs, for example, in September, we've got an event coming up called Kids Can, and CAN stands for Care About Nature, and we'll have 37 schools in a 4-day period that come from the greater Wichita area that will come and visit the Nature Center and go through stations and that. So they come from all over, and we do have things that we're, busing. Mr. Johnson had mentioned 259. We had those teachers for about 10 years. We actually had 2 teachers stationed at the Nature Center that every 2nd, 5th, and 8th grade student from 259 came to the Nature Center. And then when school budgets were cut, they were looking at funding issues and that, those teachers were removed from that. And we were fortunate that one of them was near retirement. She retired and stayed on as a naturalist for us. So that worked out well. But we do have some programs where we get some grants and we try and help school districts with, for instance, we'll give a class $100 for bus fee, to at least alleviate some of that cost, because we realize that budgets, whether your school districts or our budgets or anybody's budget, they're tough these days. So we try and help some of those school districts and things, but they do come from the greater Wichita area.
And then it's mentioned that we need to invest and modernize. Do we have any idea of what that investment is going to look like in terms just monetarily?
We do. We came up with, in 2013, we actually got with the Roybal Corporation, who designed our initial displays and things, and as you know, technology changes dramatically in a year, let alone nearly 2 decades. So we're looking at trying to modernize, bring some state-of-the-art type of displays and dioramas and things to the Nature Center, and I believe it was about $3.5 million.
Low estimates are about 2.4 on the high end.
$2.4 to $3 million in 2013, as far as the estimates we got when we worked out that plan.
To modernize the facility?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay.
And the Habitat Hall, the Koch Habitat Hall, is the main attraction as far as what people come in to see and do. They come in and they walk through those interactive displays and dioramas. Through that, they get to see the 2,200-gallon aquarium. We've got a beautiful wildlife observatory named after Bob Gress, our first director for the first 17 years. So that overlooks a wetland and stream, and people just enjoy that area. But to modernize our displays and that, there's much better technology now and some things that we'd like to work on when we redo that Habitat Hall.
Does that also include the outdoor classroom and the auditorium upgrades?
Yes,
that
sir.
Number?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, the outdoor classroom, we're kind of cramped for space as we've grown. This event tomorrow that we have, we'll have to, in the lobby, in the auditorium, in our classroom, we'll set up 8 to 10 8-foot tables with 80 to 100 chairs, and we have to set that up, take that down. So we've kind of outgrown our popularity. It's grown enough to the point where we could use something like a multi-purpose room or an outdoor classroom where we can greet kids, get off the bus, or we can do things without having to go to that extra effort. Also providing things like an outdoor amphitheater was in that. So we could have outdoor programs, maybe in the evening, and we could invite people from the community to come in to talk about different aspects of wildlife. And we cooperate with other groups, Sedgwick County Zoo and other people in the city of Wichita for our programming, as well as our own staff naturalists.
Yes, Vice Mayor.
One more question. How many members are currently in the Friends of the Great Plains Nature Center? That's a fairly new program, correct?
It's not necessarily new. Shortly after we opened the facility in 2000, we started our Friends membership. And the Friends of the Great Plains Nature Center, our membership generally runs from about $325 to $350. That is one thing that Our new board, Friends Board, is one of the most active boards that we've ever had in all the time that I've been there, and that's one thing that they're focused on now. We've had several meetings already looking at how we recruit new members and expand our membership. But it floats, depending on renewals and things, from 325 to 350.
Because on your goal number 4 as it relates to marketing, you're talking about establishing a marketing budget and a plan. I hope that would include membership, retention, and recruitment as well, and allocating some funds to dedicate for growing membership, because that's where you're going to get a good bang for your buck that way.
Exactly. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Comments? Maybe a suggested fundraiser might be pay to watch the manager pet a lion or something like that. I think that would be big.
Pet a lion? Yeah. You're talking about Troy, the city manager or farm director? Not this director. I don't do lions or rattlesnakes, but the Nature Center is a great place. Just curious, how many have ever been there? That is awesome. If you guys would ever need anything when you're out there, like I said, feel free to drop us look me up or look Amanda up, anybody else. We think it's a jewel. We think it's a benefit to Wichita. We're pretty proud of it. If you want to come walk with us, I think we may have already hit you up, or we've talked about asking you to
scheduled that next month.
Next
month?
month?
Our mayor walk out there.
Okay, good. We'd love to have you. Anybody else that come out to visit. It's a great partnership. Anytime you get 3 governmental agencies involved, it generally doesn't amount to a whole lot and more red tape and things, but in this instance we think it's a crown jewel of Wichita. People are really proud of it that work there. We've got a great staff, and there's a lot of people in this city that are very proud of the Great Plains Nature Center, and the help that the city provides is a huge part of that with Chisholm Creek Park and Troy's involvement and the city's involvement. We're pretty proud of that, so we appreciate your help. Thank you.
Robert, your next item?
Mayor, I do want to give a special thanks to Troy. Since he's been here, he has emphasized the importance of our role in this partnership for the Great Plains Nature Center, and I want to thank him for that effort because it is such a unique opportunity for us and a unique amenity. So,
thank you all.
The next item has to do with the program that was approved earlier this year by the council for enhanced enforcement teams around the 4th of July and pertaining to fireworks enforcement. Tammy Snow is going to give you an update on the enforcement effort from this year under the new regulations, what we learned, and also some observations about some issues that maybe didn't go as well as we thought they would. And then we're looking for your feedback about next steps. Now that you'll know what happened during the 4th, it would be great to get some direction on how you'd like to move forward. So with that, I turn it over to Chief Snow.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, City Council members, City Manager. Like City Manager said, my name is Tammy Snow, currently serving as the Fire Chief. May of 2017 had the City Council and the City of Wichita implemented an enforcement section to our current fireworks ordinance. And so today I'm here to present to you an after-action review, basically kind of tell you how things went, positives and negatives. And as the City Manager has already asked, would like your feedback on next steps going forward. Fire Department partnered with the Police Department, and on 2 evenings, July 3rd and July 4th, we put enforcement teams out. And our goals on that night was to improve community safety by enforcing the amended fireworks ordinance, which basically was the addition of the enforcement section, to deter illegal use of fireworks and to educate the public. And we spent significant amount of time and resources. We also partnered with the City of Wichita's communication team, in which they actually invested some marketing money as far as education, hit all the social media, did a social media blitz. We also composed some new PSA, public service announcements. So we updated those, put flyers in each one of the sales tents. Went out to as many neighborhood associations and also DAB meetings that we could possibly get our faces in front of. and did a significant amount of educating. Also, since the ordinance was new, we had a significant additional opportunities to get in front of TV and the radio, and so in other media outlets. So what we did was, on those nights, July 3rd and July 4th, we had 22 teams patrol the city. Dispatch, they have a special line, it's called the Fireworks Complaint Line. This year they received 1,437 complaints, which is about 600 plus more complaints than what they ever have in the past 5 years. But they also ran it, and usually they only open that line 4 nights. This year they opened it for 5, so they had 1 additional night. We also this year had 51 reported injuries due to fireworks, which was an increase of 15. We had 17 additional firework-related incidents, and our dollar loss was down. And I do need to do a little caveat in regards to that. Fireworks for us on reporting goes from June 27th to July 5th, so it ends at midnight on July 5th. The reason I say that is that that's the same dates as the sales for the state. But we had the Bracken fire just in the wee morning of July 6th, so it's outside of our reporting. If that were to be included in the reporting, our fire loss would have been significantly more than what it has been in past years. That Bracken fire cost a little over $400,000, $420,000, and insurance company is currently dealing with it, but it basically is because of a bottle rocket that was purchased in Oklahoma and shot at the neighbor's roof. So we did write 138 citations. Out of those citations, 1 of them was thrown out. Somebody gave us a fake ID for a 6-year-old, so that one was dismissed. So basically we had 137 citations. Out of the 137 citations, 2 of those citations ended up going to court. One's been adjudicated, the other one is still pending in court at this time. The rest of the citations, citizens have either paid the fine or they've made arrangements for payment. Here's a heat map in regards to where the citations were actually written at, kind of give you an idea that all 6 districts, we weren't partial. We sent units out that correspond to where the fire stations were located, and so we did have opportunities to write tickets in all 6 districts. Some of the feedback that we received is that some of the citizens were extremely happy. They felt that the use of illegal fireworks leading up to the holiday was significantly reduced. Received a lot of thank yous for our efforts in the enforcement. And then we had the opposite side, in which we received a lot of negative feedback and also very critical of the enforcement, including writing citations. Some of our concerns. Staffing of the teams was very problematic. And I'll start with PD. I know the police department had to mandate second shifters to stay over so we could have 22 people. They had to pull some of their assignments on the second shift. They had to transfer them over to fireworks, so they ran very skeleton crews in some of their areas, some of their divisions, due to that mandate. And from the fire department's perspective, I did a lot of voluntolding to exempt employees, and so there wasn't a bunch of volunteers. We also had some officer safety. It was a very significant concern for us. And the reason I say that is because firefighters are not trained in law enforcement. We aren't trained in de-escalating situations. We're not trained in how to handle hostile environments. In fact, both nights that I was out, both police officers asked me, are you trained in hand-to-hand combat? My answer is no. He said, do you know how to shoot a gun? And I said, well, I know how to shoot a gun. And he said, well, I got one on my left ankle. And I said, if we get to that point, I'm running. You're on your own. So, In the fireworks report, there is embedded in there a video that one of the police officers was able to use his body cam and take a picture of one of our officers getting hit in the head by the fireworks by a unhappy citizen that was getting a ticket. Other concerns. We weren't able to, due to the limited staffing and the logistics, we weren't able to actually confiscate all the fireworks. So if we'd pull up and write a ticket to somebody, we'd take just what we saw there, but we didn't have the resources to confiscate all the illegal fireworks. So hence, like I can speak personally, you know, I went back to one home 4 different times because I'd take what they had right then and they go inside and come back out and they'd have a whole bunch more. I come back around the block and say, hey, you know. Anyways, we didn't get them all confiscated, so as soon as we'd leave, they'd use their illegal fireworks. And the other thing is we'd need more teams really and truly to be more effective. And the reason I say that is because you could stand and write a ticket and watch probably 50 yards in all directions, illegal fireworks going around you. So then we go to the next one and the same thing would continue. As far as financial considerations, the sales tents, we actually had 32 this year. Normally we only average 30. So we collected $48,000. As far as the enhancement efforts, the cost estimate was about $27,417 for a net revenue of $20,583. The 138 citations could result, depending on fines and court costs and so forth, of $34,500. So to summarize, many of the citizens continued to use the illegal fireworks even after we gave it our very best efforts in regards to publicizing and educating. As far as feedback or measurement, really unsure or unclear if writing the citations had a positive impact on the actual safety of the community. The cost of the enforcement effort was covered by the collected fees, and the biggest concern is that enforcement efforts involve significant risks to staff because we just didn't have we're not trained to address hostile citizens or groups of citizens as far as from the fire perspective. And the reason I say that is when you have one police officer and one fire officer, and police officers, I can tell you what, I have a whole new perspective and admiration for them because the minute they got out of the car, they were jabbering, which is something firefighters aren't accustomed to, but what they were doing is trying to de-escalate the crowds. And so what firemen do is we stand off and wait for police officers to go do their thing and make it safe, and then we go in. But in this particular case, you know, we're walking up with them, and they're doing a phenomenal job trying to de-escalate, and we just stand there and writing the tickets. And so they don't have any backup, and in fact, there's a couple times through both the nights in which they put themselves out in officers in trouble. So we backed out of those particular situations. So that's kind of an after-action review in regards to how the enforcement part of the new fireworks ordinance went, and so I would entertain questions.
They're still digesting all of the information.
Okay, yes.
How do you feel like the timeline went? Do you feel like we should have maybe shortened things, or do you feel like it was just about right, or?
I mean, the 3rd and the 4th, I think, since it fell on the days that it did, you know, we got a lot of compliments that people thought that there was less illegal fireworks utilized prior to the dates. But this year being a Wednesday and a Thursday, I don't know if it was just, you know, I wonder if it'd be different if it was on the weekend, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But as far as the time, you know, I would say if we really wanted to put a grip on it, that we need to do it the entire time that we have them legalized or we make sales. Because there's oftentimes, one of the things that was pretty beneficial was if we could use a cutoff time, like at 11 o'clock, you know, they're illegal after that. I mean, pretty cut and dry.
Do you see a need to limit it to only the third and fourth?
As far as it would help as far as as far as enforcing, yes.
Thanks.
Yeah. Go ahead,
Thanks,
Brad.
Mayor. So in your opinion, what incentives could be used to maybe encourage more participation so we don't have to voluntold people?
Well, first of all, I think as far as from a firefighter's perspective, I don't know that I could provide adequate training so they would feel comfortable standing out there. I think that I'd have to do more partnership with law enforcement, and that basically enforcement side of it would become the law enforcement side. I think because of the way their pay structure is, it was much easier to get people on the 4th because of how they get paid when they work on holidays. I think that if there was an incentive and there was more, our lead time was pretty short because the actual didn't adopt it till May. And then, you know, we just basically had a little bit, about 6 weeks, 5 weeks to get ready. So I think if we had more lead time, that we might be able to corral more police officers if we could entice them with more additional money.
Other questions? I think we need some time to digest this before we kind of try and guide staff into any one direction.
Mayor, there had been some suggestion about whether or not you wanted this information reported back to the DABs since they participated in the process.
So I would acquiesce to the council members if they think that would be useful.
I do. My dad wanted this information, and they said at the last meeting.
Mine too.
Yeah, so that'd be a good starter.
And I've had a lot of citizens that have that were complaining. They thought that we were only enforcing in one area, you know, and it was great to see the map. Thank you for the map showing where it was very even as far as where enforcement was going on. The question I had though is, it says net revenue of $20,000 on the enforcement issue. Fines, when will you have the numbers for what fines, how much in fines were actually collected?
Well, one of the court cases is still pending, so until that one gets adjudicated, I can't give you an accurate number, but I can give you everything except for that one.
So it's really one or two that you haven't been able to collect on.
Pardon?
It's really only one or two that you haven't been able to collect on.
Just one right
now.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
All right, perfect. So I guess my question is, Mr. Manager, this is 1 year. I mean, you can't really get, in my opinion, a good grip on how this is going to work until citizens really understand that there is going to be enforcement. With the extra revenue that was collected, does that give us some sort of benchmark on how many officers we can hire for enforcement to increase? Because Chief is saying we didn't have enough officers or enough resources really to make the enforcement happen. And do we rely on that revenue for something else somewhere else?
We had anticipated in the budget that we would have some excess revenues to cover public safety expenses beyond just the 4th of July, but you've got over a $50,000 swing here, and if we are going to go forward with this program next year, you're hearing a staff recommendation that we do something either with different dates or more teams, especially on the 4th of July, which seemed to be the most problematic time.
Do you think this would, the numbers that you've seen would make that possible?
Yes.
Thank you.
One more thing. Could I possibly, when we get this reported back to the DABs, this map is great, break down just by district how many tickets were written?
Yeah, make it so that you can actually see.
Thank you.
That we can do that.
And there was a talk of increasing education along with some of this, so maybe some of those dollars could be targeted for that too.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes, Councilmember.
So I like Councilmember Clendenin's idea of using money to have more enforcement. But what I heard you say, Chief, was that it's difficult to staff those enforcement teams.
From the fire department's perspective, it is, and especially since we've had a year, I'll have to actually mandate people come back and work. And the reason I say that is because of it. I mean, when a police officer's telling me, hey, do you know hand-to-hand combat? And we're looking at 50 people and they start surrounding me and he goes, I got a gun on my left ankle, and I said, I'm backing out of here right now. And then we have video in which one of our officers got hit in the head. So from a fire department's perspective, we're not trained to do those, to engage in hostile environments or to mitigate hostile environments. So yes, we would need additional personnel, and it would be something that I'd have to talk to the police chief about and see if there's something that we could arrange through that direction. The reason they had such a, on the 4th, I mean, they didn't have near the issues they did as far as getting police officers to work on the 4th, because I believe they're paid 2.5 times wages. And so my thoughts are is if we were to make it pretty lucrative for them on the 3rd and the 4th, you might be able to entice more police officers to sign up. And if they had earlier leeway, then just, you know, the timeline was pretty short for them to try to gather people to actually work.
Okay. My other question relates to that then. So we had, I think we anticipated that the number of tents would go down.
Yes.
And it went up.
Yes, by 2.
So I'd like us to at least consider, you know, the price sensitivity here. We could probably raise that tent price a little bit more too to help us have a few more dollars to help with training, enforcement, all these things that we're asking for. So
yeah, that's always an option. And I believe that Chief Bevis worked really closely with the tent distributors, and I think the $1,500 they felt was fair. But I'm not saying that we can't. But yes, sir.
I will add that when we said the number of tents would go down, that was in the option when we were talking about a $5,000 fee, and that's when the distributor said they would not be able to maintain that number of tents in the city of Wichita. And so that's why with the number of tents, their businesses changed, their business model changed, and wholesale got a lot more contracts. And so they had their full tents, and TNT just squeezed in a couple places. That's why they bumped up. But they had shared previously $1,500, yeah, but anything, especially when we talked about the $5,000 fee, when we talked about opening up the sales to all fireworks, they were going to start balking and trying to have less tents.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Thanks, Chief.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that feedback, and we'll continue to work with you as we design the program for next year. Mayor, the last item we have is dealing with an issue that actually I think the council's been aware of for a number of years, and that's difficulties that are associated with after-hours establishments. And the police department and law department have been working on that issue as a result of some recent problems that have occurred with after-hours establishments. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to the chief to give you a little bit of background information and also share a recommendation for going forward.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Good morning, Mayor and councilors. I am excited to bring this proposed ordinance to you. Since arriving here in 2016, I've seen violence around these after-hours establishments. There's one that is now closed that was located on Broadway, where there was hundreds of shots fired at that location in 2016. These are spots where a lot of violence occurs around them. I want to thank Jan Jarman for her work on this, as well as police staff, Lieutenant Easter and Captain East. I think we have a good ordinance to present to you today. So the background, unlicensed after-hours establishments have been an issue for many years, as I mentioned. In addition to the violence, we also see a lot of property crime, thefts, as well as assaults. This year we've had a homicide and a shooting occur at one this summer. And this is timely in light of the increase in violence. I want to remind everybody that there is not one magic bullet that solves violence, that there's many factors that feed into it, and there's many different variables that we need to look at when addressing them. One of them is locations of where we're seeing concentrations of violent crime. And as we've dealt with before with the nuisance ordinance, this is a continuation of our focus on nuisance locations and problem locations. So what is an after-hours establishment? They are generally operate after bar close till the later morning, early morning hours, 4 to 5 a.m., often open around midnight. They can draw hundreds of patrons inside there, and in many cases they operate like a bar. In one recent case, we found that some back doors were chained shut, others were blocked. There's often unregulated restaurant-type business operating, and in many of them, obviously they're operating like a bar. Here is the pictures that I mentioned of the one where there's alcohol stacked, as well as the chain around the back door. And again, these places are totally unregulated, which is problematic for us to address. We have no legal right to enter without a warrant. It's difficult to enter inside, and the owners know the rules very well. And in the past, they have not given us consent to entry, and we have just kind of washed our hands of it. Now, this is not a problem that's unique to Wichita. This is an issue that is common across the country. As a matter of fact, if you were to Google after-hours clubs, you would find that many cities struggle with them with the same issues we're seeing. So we looked around the nation and looked at best practices and who was doing well at addressing them, and we worked a lot of those different elements into this ordinance. And again, your neighbors will also tell you that this is problematic. The sounds of shots fired. The one on Broadway, one of the neighbors was telling me how she had holes in her roof from gunshots being fired. They have no rules, no licensing. They pretty much do whatever they want inside. The lack of regulations are dangerous for the people that go there, for the neighbors, and it is really unfair because of all the others that have to follow the rules, right? Bars have extensive rules that they have to follow. These after-hours clubs have none. Again, this is what they kind of look like inside. Looks just like a bar. There's dance floors, there's a bar. So what are the rules associated with the after-hours establishment? What makes them an after-hours establishment? So it is, if it meets these following criteria, if an ongoing venue meets two of these factors, it must be licensed. That is playing of music, live or recorded, entertainment such as trivia or games, gambling, sporting events in person or broadcast on screens, crowds of over 20 people, and alcoholic beverages must be present. If it is an ongoing venue, it meets two of these factors, it must be licensed. We talked about the food offered by an unlicensed vendor for purchase or by a paid entry. Entry allowed upon payment of a fee or membership, security guards present, advertised on social media or as other types of media as open to the public, and it operates between the hours of midnight and 6. And it's an ongoing activity or business. Ongoing activity or business is key. Well, license does not be required for with this. Any business that is already licensed, so any business that is already licensed, entertainment establishments, restaurants, bars, convenience stores, hotels, motels, boarding houses, hospitals, and any venue that is not ongoing in nature, like a party at a house. And again, operates during hours other than that midnight to 6 a.m., right? So if you're operating other than those hours, the license is not required.
So, Chief, can we have a regular nightclub transition to an after-hours club now? Just simply by saying we're closing and we're transitioning to an after-hours?
Not currently with the ordinance as I understand them. And that is written specifically in the ordinance, is correct, Jan? Yeah.
Now, they do that in other cities. I know Fort Worth does that.
There are other
They'll
places
shut it down
that
at
have-
2 and they're open from 2 to 3 and no alcohol served. The rules change, but it's similar to what you're
It
saying.
becomes like a
restaurant.
private party or
They're still charging a fee, they're serving water and pop and.
Are you going to address potentially that from happening in this ordinance?
Yeah, Jan, please come forward. Jan was instrumental in helping us get this, and all these things were discussed with staff.
If you have a liquor license under Chapter 4.16, or if you have an entertainment establishment license, those have to clear out. They would not be allowed to be open after hours currently. Under our current law, you cannot stay. In fact, we have entertainment establishments now that we have been catching occasionally who are letting patrons stay after closing time, and that's a violation.
Jan, I think the question may be, though, under the recommended ordinance, would they be able to clear everyone out and then operate as an after-hours establishment?
No.
Under this ordinance
No,
that's being
this
proposed?
would not allow that.
Okay.
This will work well with the other ordinances we already have.
Just one other question I want to ask while we've got this slide up. It says on here, any venue that is not ongoing in nature of a house party. How do we differentiate that? Like, how do we know, is this an after hours or is this Councilmember Meitzner just having another one of his big house parties?
Yeah. Well, again, it goes back to what the license requirements are for. So we've got this list, crowds, alcoholic beverages, sporting events, gambling, music live or recorded,
Sounds like a Meitzner.
food, and the ongoing nature of it is what flags it, right? With these a number of these factors that are in there. That makes sense. So the key is ongoing, right? So if the party was a couple days a week, weekends, that would potentially qualify it. And if it met the other criteria that were listed.
So your officers are going to know, hey, this is a one-off, you know, you're not going to go in there the first time, probably have the location called in.
Correct. And keep in mind, right now, we're only aware of one of these in the city right now that's operating. And it's because we get calls there for shots fired and these disturbances that we talked about early on. What is the procedure for obtaining a license? Very similar to the other entertainment license that we have. You file an application with the city treasurer. Got to have proof of insurance, safety plan, and a manager plan. An application fee of $100 for inspections and $400 a year for the license. Now, what is the manager's plan, the policy for managers? One of the things that we've seen in the past is that oftentimes establishments will, you know, I don't work here, I'm not part of it, and they'll point the finger at other people and it makes it more difficult to enforce. So part of this plan makes it clear who is in charge for us and who can be held responsible for incidents at that location. And it's similar to the entertainment and drinking establishment licenses. So the benefits of this, obviously, the big one for me is it's going to help us reduce the violent crime around these. It's going to improve our neighborhoods. Will allow us to enter and have a checklist of safety for those inside. Allow us, the police, to monitor dangerous illegal activity that's been associated with these that we've seen in the past, as well as the food safety monitoring, that minors do not have access to alcohol. Here's some of the food equipment at the establishment, not clean, very dirty, as well as the fee at the front door. So a quick analysis: it will not require additional licenses for businesses that are already licensed by the city of Wichita or state. Will not impact BYOB establishments because they close at midnight. Will not infringe on any group's right to gather. One of our concerns was the cigar bars and how would that fit in with it. We found that they all close well before midnight in the ones that we are aware of. I believe this will help our police department be more effective and it will ensure that the citizens of Wichita have a safe place to gather on those many different variables that I mentioned. Creates a level playing field for the businesses that must be licensed right now versus those that are skipping around the rules. And again, reduce crime and improve the safety in the neighborhood.
Questions? Chief, one thing I'd be concerned about is putting some kind of incentive for businesses to get their license. For instance, if we find some businesses operating without the license, that we have some pretty stiff penalties, something along the lines that they can't just go apply for their license next week and then open up. If we find they know the rules and they don't apply for a license, then we can shut them down and they can't even apply maybe for 6 months or a time period that makes sense, that will give them proper incentive to play by the rules.
I got that noted.
So Chief, how does the nuisance ordinance work with this ordinance?
Well, they can work hand in hand. Right now, the nuisance ordinance is more along the lines of a problem location when we have things that meet the criteria. They're trigger events that we call them.
Right.
But one of the issues is that when no one's around, it's harder to make a solid case for presentation, right? If they lock their door, we don't know if it occurred, where this occurred, there's no one to interview. It is problematic in the case of these after-hours clubs. And we've tried to use it, and it just hasn't been the best tool possible. And we want to be nimble and able to respond quickly to neighbors' concerns and violent crime. And this is a tool that will give us a little more leverage. The other thing with the nuisance ordinance is that they have time periods where they fall under that. And after that time period is up, the clock starts again.
Oh, yeah.
So oftentimes they'll watch their act a little bit until that time's frame up and then revert back to the past behavior.
Okay, so they could work hand in hand.
They will work hand in hand, yeah.
So back to the question about a entertainment, something that's already a bar. Why couldn't they? So we're going to write it into the ordinance that they can apply for one of these after hours?
The way the current ordinances are written, Jen, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's not possible for them to do this, the way the current ordinances are written. Did I explain that properly?
They wouldn't want this.
No, I'm not suggesting we do, but I just wondered how we are avoiding it.
Well, state law says that they couldn't be open that late if they have a liquor license. City law says they couldn't be open that late if they have a liquor license. So this law is really for people who could be probably licensed as an entertainment establishment, because you don't have to drink to be an entertainment establishment. And we're trying not to punish businesses who already have a license. So this is the license of last resort. If you have no other license, then you need to get this one if you're open all night long. And we're really trying to craft this in a way that encourages everyone to have a license and doesn't punish those who have already gone through the steps and gotten one. I don't know if that's a bigger answer than what you asked, but that's the bigger picture of why we want to do it this way.
Yeah.
So is the establishment without a liquor license, but they're charging an admission, are they then giving away the alcohol, or are they selling it? Exactly how's that working?
Yeah, so it is a BYOB club. Okay. If they were to sell alcohol, that would be an additional violation. This does give us the opportunity to get in those places to make sure that's not happening. Okay. Whereas right now, they're locking the door, and you can clearly see by the pictures we obtained in the one that there is a bar there.
And you can only get in with a warrant.
Right. So this gives us that regulation, that regulative ability to go in and monitor what's happening.
Perfect.
I get that. I was just trying to figure out how they were getting
Councilmember Meisner.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So, Chief, I'm just trying to think, so you've surveyed kind of around the country, and I assume Kansas City area has probably got similar problems, or major metropolitan areas. So I'm trying to think, what's the gray area that we pass this ordinance and then a year from now, oh my gosh, we've had an adverse effect on. I was trying to think, somebody has a one-off graduation party, a college, because it couldn't be high school because of age. So you had 1 million cars around, you get a complaint, So does the police come on a noise complaint on a different environment, or would this
Councilor Meitzer,
impact?
this would not apply to a graduation party. Now, if they chose to have a graduation party every week for 6 months, then potentially it could, because obviously there's something more going on there. That ongoing is the key to your question.
And is it, you're not defining it has to be in a commercial, I mean, you keep referring to Broadway, this is, doesn't mean commercial or
Correct.
residential property, could be.
Could be.
If I could on that one.
Yeah,
too.
please, go ahead.
There's a reason that we didn't want to put commercial property, 2 reasons actually. We have had problems in the past where there was like a metal building in the back of a residential property, and that became a weekly paid party spot, and we want to catch those. Second reason is, as a past prosecutor, that's a hard element to prove. You have to bring in a whole additional witness to prove the type of zoning. So frankly, it's easier for officers and prosecutors to grasp if we're looking for ongoing activity rather than the type of commercially zoned property. So that's why we chose it that way. And I'll tell you, on these that we've been seeing lately, one of our biggest concerns is safety. It is frightening to think that they are letting hundreds of people into clubs, and the doors were chained. If there was a major emergency at one of those clubs, a shooting inside the club, a fire inside the club, you can't get out. So, I mean, this is getting very serious at this point.
Councilor Meitzer, too, to address that, we could also give you a year report with where properties were located. Was it commercial? Was it residential? How many citations were issued? How many complaints? We would be happy to provide that information to you as well.
Okay. And again, this is mainly from this midnight to 6 in the morning?
It is strictly from that time.
So if Councilmember Bluebaugh's having a Chiefs party every Sunday, it is spread, it's okay? It's not effective?
Not effective.
Okay. All right.
So I think
Just during the football season, of course.
So I think we're encouraging the chief to craft something in policy form to bring to a council meeting.
I have one more question.
Yes.
So these establishments could not get a liquor license?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Could we also, in the recommendation, for those who apply, recommend they have like a security system, video monitoring, because I know that's been beneficial at one of those spots. So maybe not a requirement, but just encourage them to do that so it can be more helpful.
We could encourage it, yes. Yep. And I'm not sure legalities of mandating it. But maybe we could charge, maybe the fee is this, but if you have video monitoring, it's reduced.
It is actually listed in our plan that's, you don't have to have it, but it could be part of your safety plan. So it's already listed as an option.
Well, I like a reduced fee, like Councilmember Bluebaugh said, because that would encourage more of it and help us out in the situations if something were to happen.
Okay.
Anything else? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Chief.
I think that concludes today's workshops. Anything else to add? All right. Thank you all.
House party at the mayor's.
Right.